Did you see that video I had of what Rav Lichtenstein said about on Yom Yerushalayim? Rav Moshe Lichtenstein, I greatly respected his father, who was Rabbi Aaron Lichtenstein. Okay. Already, Rav Aaron Lichtenstein is the son-in-law of the Rabbi Soloveitchik, the Gusher Rosh Yeshiva. We should call him a Gusher. By the way, well, he started the thing. He was invited after the 6 Day War. By the way, how is it the Yeshiva in Gush was able to be founded? How is the whole Gush able to be founded? Thanks to the 6 Day War. So I think it was in the early 70s, Rav Lichtenstein was invited to helm the yeshiva, and that's what he did until his last days. He used to live in Jerusalem, by the way. He used to drive in to give shir, but then he eventually moved to Alon Shavut. So the whole Gush owes it to the 6 Day War. So Rav Lichtenstein, I put this on the group to show everybody, had what to say, and I was surprised by what he said. He was basically upset about those right-wing extremists, those Kahanas, he called them, Ben Gvir and Smotrich, not doing their thing, and it's all about Jewish koach. How could they call themselves Utzma Yudit? That's not our derech and all that stuff. Now, first of all, I'm not a big fan of Smotrich to begin with. Okay, I have my complaints about him. He does not represent me. I never told people to vote for him, so I don't care necessarily about him. Ben Gvir, we've also said. So people like him, they don't like him. If I was in his situation, I'd probably do things differently. But he gets a bad rap. But once again, I'm not endorsing anything he says, or I'm not against him. But he's screaming from the pulpit as a rabbi against these two figures. What I disapprove, and I think he got dead wrong, which was so surprising, he's talking about he doesn't want the Judaism of Kahana and Ben Gvir. He says, I want the Judaism, not the Koach. I want the Judaism of Aaron and Moshe. Now, you can look at this as a two-minute clip. The leftists were proud of him saying this. Leftists, Haaretz journalists were saying, this is an example of a rabbi we like to hear, which should tell you something. He should tell him something. It's like, oh, Haaretz is approving my message, so maybe I'm off the derech. Okay, maybe I've lost the thread. Secondly, and this is the strange thing, he's saying that not koach, that's not our derech. I want the Judaism of Aaron and Moshe. So, okay, so I don't know, but Moses never fought the Amalekites. He was praying when Joshua fought the Amalekites. But, hold on, I want you to read what Moses himself wrote about himself. Moses gave a speech and then wrote it down. And he describes how he did the following, okay? Moses is describing fighting against Sichon. Moses led the battle, by the way. It says that Moses did it. Okay? And then he says, we did it. And Dvarmi says, we did it. Wa'itanehu Adonai Eloheinu lefanenu. Wa'nachoto with kol amo. God gave him before us. The Lord our God gave him before us, means delivered him to us to do as we pleased. So he smote him and his children and his entire people. We conquered all his cities at that time. We struck the entire populations of the cities. Really? Wait, he destroyed the cities, all the people inside. And the women and the children. Moses, we left no survivors. We took the animals for ourselves. We took a lot of spoils. And all the other spoils from the cities that we had conquered. We took their possessions. So Moses is saying, I agree with Rav Lichtenstein, but he didn't realize that the Torah of Moses that he wants is the Torah. This is how you treat Israel's enemies, to people whom we approached with peace initially. Remember? The people of Gaza were given an offer by the state of Israel and the governments of Israel for the last 19 years. Peace for peace. Here's your place. Do what you will. They even had the people living closest to the Gazans, employing them, driving them to the hospital. The most disgusting thing that they ever did shows their biggest demonstration before they killed the Jew when they came into that town was what? They destroyed the ambulance. It's on video, right? You saw that? What? That was the first thing they shot. The Arabs came into the town early in the morning on Shmini Atzeres. Everybody's still asleep because it's not a religious place. It's 6:30 or 7 o'clock in the morning. What's the first thing they shoot up? The ambulance. The same ambulance that the woman was saying, we used to give them rides to the hospital from Gaza to there. We did this favor. That's what you do. You give favors to your enemies, they'll do this. So the Jewish people approached Sichon with peace. It says that. Sichon denied them. Sichon attacked them. So what did Moses do? He killed all of them. He took away their territory. And he took all their possessions. He continues. Lo asher sagavam mimenu. Nothing was denied to us. All of it was given to us by God. Oh, you think that was an exception? What does it say about when Og attacked them? Okay. This happened sometime later. Og should have learned his lesson. But what did Og decide to do? Attack the Jewish people. So what God do? He gave Og into the hands of Moshe Rabbeinu and the rest of the Jewish people. We smote him until we left for him no survivor. We conquered all his cities at that time. There was no kiryah. Kiryah means type of town that has a kir, a walled city, right? Kiryah. Nowadays, kiryah means like a campus or something like that, or a compound. Fine. There was no place that we didn't take from him. This is in the Golan. Shishim ir kol chevel argov, mamlechet og babashan. 60 cities, this entire strip called the Argov, where Og's kingdom in the Bashan. The Bashan is basically the Golan area. So he says, he continues, we utterly destroyed them. We killed all of them, just like we did to Sihon, the king of Heshbon. We also depopulated the cities, Hanashim v'hataf, and the women and the children. So Rav Lichtenstein, I hope he's going to listen to this, but I don't understand what he's looking for. A pacifist Judaism. But Judaism sometimes calls on us to be strong and use our koach. Gvura is a Jewish midah. And sometimes using force against the enemy is something we have to learn to do. Just because we haven't been doing it for a while doesn't mean it's become forbidden or it's not our style. Rabbi Brand said in a humorous manner earlier this week, he wrote about this, Rabbi Yitzchak Brand, the Brisi Yitzchak. He was trying to justify the Aguda wanting the war to stop. Okay? Just give the man, make it ASAC and make a deal, get the hostages back, no more war. And of course, this is a foolish thing because it's just going to lead to more war. So Rabbi Brand, who comes from the Aguda camp, he's totally Haredi, says, why would the Aguda people take such a position? And he says the answer is that for them, Torah is whatever we did in the Gullus, what we're used to doing. But it's been such a while since we actually had to do that which involves national policy, like running a state and war and dealing with these things, that it's just not part of our Torah anymore. So too, I can understand where Rav Lichtenstein's coming from. He is clean shaven. He's definitely not an Agudist or comes from that stream. But for him, Judaism has to be limited to that which, what? We're familiar. What the rabbi calls Gullus Judaism. Okay? Diaspora Judaism, the exile mentality. So the exile mentality says that we do not fight back. I think it's very fortunate that at least the Gush exists. You know why? Because if there hadn't been a victory forced upon us by the 6-day war, no, they wouldn't have gone back to the Gush. They would see no reason to fight for such a thing. Thank God we have young men now who realize, like Harel there, you see the bumper sticker there. We're fighting for this. There are people who realize we have to fight. That's what we've been pushed into this. We're fighting for survival, and that means we have to conquer, and unfortunately we have to kill. And I was surprised I had to educate even someone, a rabbi in his 60s, who's a dayan, who's unfamiliar with the basic halacha, which says that saving Israel from trouble, fighting the enemy when they attack us, Atzalat Yisrael Mitzar. That's this war. That's what the Shulchan Aruch even refers to. Shulchan Aruch doesn't talk about war. It involves killing all the males and not killing women and children. Can you believe I'm unaware of this? And they even talk about, do we have to minimize collateral damage? Did the Rambam or any of the sages talk about when you fight a war against your enemy, try to minimize collateral damage on the civilian population? Did they ever have such a thing? Did they ever make a distinction between the combatants and the civilians even? Certainly not, but that was Canaanites.
Nobody in the world.
Nobody. The Chazal never had such a thing. Why should we have such a thing? They and the bad guys definitely don't do that. They say the Adarabah. They say women and children are considered targets and combatants, especially if they live here, wherever they choose. That's fair game. So why would we ever come up with such a rule? Who made up these things? No sense. Okay, the Geneva Convention, and we were told that we have, and also that's another thing. On what grounds do we have to abrogate the Torah by engaging in an agreement, a peace treaty, a deal? We're just going to accept the rules that they made up? The guy make up a Torah, so we have to keep it? Is that how the Torah works? The British and the French originally tried to treat their German POWs according to these rules, They so the Germans weren't doing it for them, so they just executed German prisoners, and that got the Germans to, tit for tat. It reminded them. And by the way, because you guys know about the history, what Germany did in Eastern Europe when they invaded what was then the line that they had drawn between them and the Soviet Union. Remember, the Soviet Union expanded westward at the beginning of World War II. They took over parts of Poland. They already owned Ukraine and Belarus were not even independent countries at the time. They were just part of the Soviet Union. They took over Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, places like that, large parts of what's today Romania. That's what the Soviet Union did for 2 years, till the Germans double-crossed them and invaded, and they start pushing into eastward, into Russia proper. You know about this part of history?
Yeah.
So aside from the fact they started massacring Jews, which was terrible, and who was their biggest allies when the Germans invaded the Soviet Union and their territory? So the Russians were, of course, taken aback by this, and they were on the run. But who decided to rebel against the Russians at that point? The ethnic Ukrainians. They became allies of the Germans. They want their own Ukrainian state. They became the worst perpetrators of the Holocaust. The Ukrainians saw the Germans as liberators, and now, oh, good, brothers in arms. So the Germans did all sorts of terrible things to the Russian people, especially to their POWs, right? Just terrible. Basically, treated them as almost as bad as they treated Jews. So the Russians, when they came back, when they finally, 4 years later, when they were pushing the Germans back, what did they do? Do you think they treated the Germans with any modicum of, I don't know, anything international law-wise or anything like this? Of course not. Okay? So that's what you have to do when you deal with these terrible people. You can't say, well, international law. And lastly, and this is something that I realized was the subject of machlokes, there are people who are saying if we don't keep international law, it's a chil Hashem. And that's been argued by, we said this, Rabbi Chaim Hershenson said this, the first people who talk about international law said Jews have to keep it, otherwise it's a chil Hashem. And that's the perfect gullus mentality. We have to stick to what the Christians tell us based on their Christian ideas, or it's a chil Hashem. No, adarabba, we're not supposed to listen to them. We don't take our cues about what's considered proper behavior or moral behavior, ethical behavior from them. They're supposed to get it from us. Christians get together, or former Christians get together and say, this is the ethic of war and all that, and Jews don't stick to it. Oh, those terrible Jews. They're non-Christian. By the way, who said this? Pat Buchanan, Yamach Shemo, said this. Okay. So, no, we're not supposed to learn from these types of people. It's not a chil Hashem if we keep the Torah, we do what we have to do to survive. It's a kiddush Hashem if we do that. Okay? It's just slightly, by the way, that's the Cheskel's definition of kiddush Hashem. God standing up for the Jewish people, fighting back finally. That's a kiddush Hashem. By the way, that is the kiddush Hashem that we speak about when we talk about Kaddish, right? We're supposed to say Kaddish. The first 2 words of Kaddish are supposed to be what in Hebrew? Yeah, Yithgadel and Yithkadesh. Why? Yithgadel ti v'Yithkadish ti. Then Yecheskel says in the name of God, I shall be magnified on that day and I shall be sanctified. What day is he referring to? The day when God sticks up for the Jewish people and they fight back and they win. Okay? So just to know, the biggest kiddush Hashem is Jewish people winning finally, on their own terms, by the way.